Mysterious and thrilling reasoning flow, the protagonist has no system, no abilities, and cannot pass levels with violence. Updating diligently, the Blue Star encountered a strange invasion, leaving humanity powerless to resist and the world facing destruction. The upper authorities are raising humans like lambs and forcibly selecting representatives from various countries for live streaming entertainment, but the content is actually a strange tale of rules. At the beginning of the lottery, representatives from various countries showcased a plethora of talents, but only the representatives of the Dragon Country, who were talented without talent, had nowhere to go. Enter the eerie world as a mortal. Ordinary people are ordinary people should be ordinary people, so with the wisdom of ordinary people, shine a bright and brilliant light. Chapter 1 Absolutely correct. Night of Terror. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Wui tightly grabbed the blanket on his body, leaving only a small slit that could show his gaze, and looked out at the dimly lit bedroom. The next second, a twisted old man's face suddenly approached this gap, and the twisted corners of his mouth revealed broken human teeth below. His eyes were wide open, revealing cloudy yellow spots and bloodstains, and his pupils were dilated, staring at Bai Wui. Any normal person would scream at the sight of this terrifying scene, but Bai Wui just tightly clenched his hands, letting the cold sweat flow from behind and staring motionless at the grinning old man. Rule 2. If you see it appearing in your bedroom, you need to immediately hide yourself with a blanket and watch the other person's actions until they leave the bedroom. The days of the end are very ordinary. At first, the sky was slightly redder than usual, and then it started raining. Then, a meteorite fell, shattering the head of the goddess of Lighthouse Country. When no one realized what had happened, all channels were hijacked, and all screens were playing a video. A host jumped out from the unidentified flying object landing on the statue, announcing that the entire Earth had been taken over by the Eerie. The first person to jump out and oppose was the president of the country of Bangzi. As he spoke out loudly against the offensive behavior of extraterrestrial visitors, the host wearing a clown mask just listened quietly to him chatter incessantly. As the president spoke, his body gradually bent down, his bones bent, and his body grew short and thick fur. In the end, the scattered clothes left only a barking mangy dog. At the same time, many towering tentacles continue to grow in the rivers within the territory of the country, causing pollution to the river and causing heavy casualties among the residents along the banks. The Lighthouse Country, which instructed all of this, was the first to actively connect and announce its surrender. Later, other countries also had to bow their heads under pressure from the other side. The host then announced that all countries around the world must participate in the Eerie game. Although you are worthless to us, we are willing to give you a chance to please us. At that time, the condescending host spoke with such arrogance. Each country has one representative to participate in our game. If your representative can survive, the whole country can not only have the opportunity to survive, but also receive rewards from the gods, and the participants can obtain supreme abilities. Upon hearing these words, the originally reluctant representative of Benziguo immediately became excited and took the initiative to speak up. Great, my country has produced many talented people, and this is the time to gamble on national luck. As long as we send any of the talented high school students, the reward will still be easily obtained. He laughed heartily, and the faces of representatives from other countries were also different. Although this game sounds very dangerous, as long as it is cleared, the benefits are also enormous. Developed countries with abundant elite talents have begun to summon institutions to select talents, while some poor small countries are looking bitter. Who told you that players can be assigned? At this moment, the host interrupted everyone's movements. Based on the principle of fairness, all players will be randomly selected from among your citizens, and the game will also be broadcast live to ensure there is no possibility of cheating. The representatives of various countries suddenly froze, but the host ignored them and clapped his hands. 3 platforms appeared on the UFO, and then hundreds of people suddenly suspended in the air next to the broken statue of the goddess. 1 second ago, Bai Wui, an ordinary citizen of the Dragon Kingdom, was hiding under the eaves of a roadside store in the blood rain, but the next second he was transported to a height of 100 meters. Before recovering from shock and fear, 3 people floated from mid-air onto the UFO with a casual move from the host, and then landed steadily on the platform. These 3 people are from Benzi country, Azuo country, and Cho country, standing on stage with a bewildered expression. They saw the host impatiently grabbing Benzi country's hand and pressing it onto the platform. The next second, there was a flicker on the platform, and the originally short and chubby man's face changed. Then, he shook off the host's hand and roared, extending his extremely strong arms. The host who was thrown away was not angry, but suspended in mid-air and directly picked up the microphone to explain. It seems that this student has drawn a power-type ability, which is not bad. In many cases, the puzzles in the strange tales can be violently solved with absolute power, which greatly benefits the pass rate. Upon seeing the battle between the players from our country, the other 2 players immediately took the initiative to press their hands down, and the platform immediately flickered again. Then, the next second, a burst of flames suddenly appeared on the player from the corrupt country, startling all the players from the neighboring country. However, he burst out laughing and snapped his fingers before retracting the flames. There was nothing unusual about the player from the 3 kingdoms, but his expression was also full of joy, which actually alerted the representatives of various countries watching the live broadcast. This kind of ability that doesn't reveal mountains or water may be a spiritual or other more powerful existence, but before they could think more, the host waved his hand and let the 3 of them return to the air. With the previous example, the people behind them no longer wrote in ink, but instead competed to extract abilities, and soon arrived at Bai Wui. When he truly stood on stage, Bai Wui was still a bit nervous. In a state of anticipation and unease, he pressed his hand. The platform is not flashing. This is. The host, who was suspended in mid-air, was stunned and then flew to Bai Wui's side. He forcefully pressed his hand several times on the platform, then pushed Bai Wui away and pulled another person from the sky. When he pressed the other person's hand, the platform flickered. Bai Wui was completely frozen. At this moment, a group of countries led by the Lighthouse Kingdom in the connected countries were overjoyed, while the representative of the Dragon Kingdom turned pale and immediately began to gather a think tank to deal with the possible impending crisis. The players from the Dragon Kingdom didn't actually draw any abilities. It seems that these atheistic fools have indeed offended the gods, and even heaven is about to destroy this country. If the Dragon Kingdom encounters a disaster, it will be a time for our country to invade on a large scale. At that time, such a vast territory will all belong to the hands of our 3 kingdoms. Surrounded by a lot of discussions, Bai Wui's face turned pale as he gazed towards the direction of his motherland. Many complex emotions appeared in his heart. Returning empty-handed, not only did he apologize for the expectations of his motherland, but he also had a much higher chance of dying after entering the strange talk. Don't make any noise. Seeing Bai Wui's tragic situation, the host did not take pleasure in it. Instead, his face darkened and he stopped the other contestants from discussing. Next, he drew abilities for the other contestants and repeatedly tried Bai Wui several times, but the result remained the same. The host eventually gave up trying, and then waved his hand again. The contestants who were originally in the sky suddenly disappeared, and then the live broadcast screen suddenly darkened before appearing again, becoming a lit living room. Guidelines for readers. Hello, welcome to Read This Rule-based guide on bizarre topics. Before reading, please refer to the following guidelines, which will help you have a pleasant, comfortable, and safe reading experience. 1. This guide is dedicated to providing advice and assistance to potential rule-based fantasy players. In order to differentiate as comprehensively as possible, the rules are divided into several categories. The specific plot is for reference only, and any similarity is purely coincidental. 2. This guide will be updated at least twice a day before completion, with each chapter having a word count of 2,000 or more. If you find that the content of this chapter is insufficient, please immediately remind the author to supplement it. 3. When you start reading this guide, please try not to give up reading. We believe that long-term and continuous reading of this guide will have a considerable positive effect on your physical and mental health. 4. Any tipping for this guide is beneficial as it will help the author maintain their vital signs and better serve readers. 5. The guide author will actively listen to the reader's suggestions, so if you feel happy or negative while reading, you can actively provide feedback to the author in the comments section, and the author will try their best to respond positively. 6. In this guide, the protagonist should not have any abilities, systems, or other types of cheats, and their physical signs should be normal humans. They should not have physical qualities or characteristics that humans should not have. If you find that the protagonist in a certain part of the guide has the above characteristics, it indicates that the protagonist in that chapter has SJS. Please do not give up reading immediately, but stop all rewards until after one volume. If the protagonist still has these characteristics, give up reading. If it resumes, you can continue reading. 7. All content in this guide is false and for entertainment purposes only. This is all the reading guidelines for this guide. Wishing you a happy reading experience in this guide, and once again expressing our utmost gratitude for your noble actions. Guide author with knife holder. Chapter 2 Absolute Correct. Record rules. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 3 Absolutely Correct. Post-disaster exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 4 Absolute Correct. Between words. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 5 Absolutely Correct. Contradictions and conflicts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Afterwards, Bai Wui also searched repeatedly for the current room. But there were too few rooms in a family, so I quickly finished flipping through them. Apart from listening to the corner of the wall and hearing that my mother was in my grandfather's room, there was nothing else to gain. After wandering around this eerie home with nothing to do, his mother appeared again and cooked a dinner. After finishing the dinner, night gradually fell. Just as Bai Wui was lazily thinking about whether or not to invite his mother today, the door next to the kitchen suddenly rang with a bang. Bai Wui suddenly jumped up from the sofa with vigilance and ran to the door leading to the outside world. This door is an iron one, with a cat's eye. Bai Wui leaned his eyes towards the cat's eye, only to find that there seemed to be something wrong with the glass of the cat's eye, which was completely blurry, except for the lights in the hallway. It's impossible to determine who the people outside are like this. The rule is not to allow outsiders to open the door, but it does not mean to open the door for family members. Bai Wui decisively left the door and prepared to leave directly, but at this moment, a sound came from behind. Who is it? The familiar voice of the mother sounded from behind, followed by a series of footsteps. Bai Wui suddenly turned around to stop the mother who had already walked to the door, who looked puzzled. Why are you standing by the door and not opening it? Don't open the door, outside. There's an unknown person outside. The incident suddenly occurred, and Bai Wui didn't come up with a good excuse. His mother didn't buy it, so she continued to walk forward, saying while walking. If you don't know each other, it could be checking the water meter. If you don't want to open it, go play on your own for a while. Mom, go open the door. It seems that she must open this door. As my mother approached, the sound of knocking on the door became even more intense, and in the end, it was almost not knocking on the door, but rather hitting it with something hard. Judging from the sound, the location of the impact is at the bottom of the door, and no matter what you think, it doesn't seem like a normal person knocking. In a moment of urgency, Bai Wui didn't care too much and acted directly according to the most obvious method in the rules. Mom, don't worry about that door. It's getting late now and I'm afraid to sleep alone. Can you stay with me all night? Rule 4. Mother is very tired. She sometimes falls asleep with you and will not refuse this request. When she sleeps on your bed, she will not react to anything. After all, I am also an adult, so it may seem a bit embarrassing to say this. However, compared to the crisis of life, Bai Wui can't afford to worry about such a small matter. As soon as he spoke, he saw his mother's expression, which was originally natural, suddenly froze. It was not the stiffness of being stunned, but the stiffness of all the muscles on his face, losing all expression. Just now, the lively mother nodded, her waxen face resembling wrinkled wood, and even her chest seemed to have lost its heaviness. The knocking sound behind the door grew louder and louder, and in the end, there were even some broken and sticky sounds mixed in with the clanging sound of hard objects. My mother no longer cared about the sound, but walked straight to the bedroom. The knocking on the door did not stop with my mother's departure. On the side, the kitchen also lost its last ray of light and was once again shrouded in the eerie pitch black. The blurry objects inside seemed to be constantly wriggling and brewing something. Bai Wui didn't want to stay in this place anymore, so he followed his mother into his bedroom early. When she arrived at the bedroom, her mother was lying quietly in bed. Her thin and shriveled body stood straight, her mouth wide open, but her eyes tightly closed. Rather than falling asleep, it was more like a dead corpse, and her chest still had no ups and downs. Bai Wui reached out his hand and pressed his finger on the tip of his mother's nose. No breathing, this should be a corpse, no wonder the rules say she won't react to anything. My mother's body hasn't cooled down or even stiffened, so she really just died. This idea startled Bai Wui in a cold sweat. Inviting my mother to sleep together would kill her. Did I sacrifice a role that was not fully explored due to a crisis with other options? Even now, it seems too late to feel regretful. With the series of disturbances just now, time seems to have accelerated. The eerie and chilly fear of the first day reappeared, and a blurry figure gradually rose from the door of the bedroom that could not be closed. After hesitating to recall the rules, Bai Wui tightly covered his mother with a blanket before hiding himself in the blanket again. The knocking on the door outside did not stop, echoing the heartbeat of Bai Wui. As his mind went blank, the familiar deformed old man reappeared from the crack in the door. Its skin has become even more shriveled, but its eyes have become larger and larger, like inferior dolls. When Bai Wui gritted his teeth and stared at it intently, it seemed to grin mockingly and slowly approached the blanket again. The old man climbed directly onto the bed this time, slowly moving his head from above, showcasing the ugly head with sparse hair from different angles. Its neck was very slender, as if it could break at any moment. As he turned his neck to the direction exactly opposite the door, the old man suddenly stopped and looked at Bai Wui with a strange smile. Across the door is the direction of the window sill. Now, behind the old man, a pitch-black figure is hanging outside the window, slowly drifting as if moving towards the inside. No pupil shrinks like a pinhole. Rule 2. If you see it appearing in your bedroom, you need to immediately hide yourself with a blanket and watch the other person's actions until they leave the bedroom. Rule 3. If you live on the 11th floor and there are no people outside the window, if you see a humanoid object outside the window, you need to immediately turn on the lights and check the window. If he follows the second rule, then he violates the third rule, and if he gets up and turns on the light, then he violates the second rule. The hand that grabbed the blanket suddenly tightened, and the mockery on the old man's face grew stronger, while the figure outside seemed to have already crawled into the window with one hand. What should we do? Bai Wui's brain was running rapidly while still staring at the old man. At present, the only shelter in the rules is Grandpa's room, but if you want to go from the bedroom to Grandpa's room, you need to walk to the corridor, and the corridor and living room are not clearly separated, which still violates the rules. Suddenly, he thought of something and immediately stood up. The expression of the deformed old man seemed to stiffen a bit. Bai Wui stared coldly at him, slowly moving his toes, his body still tightly wrapped in the blanket, trembling like a dustpan. The key to hiding oneself with a blanket is to hide, but in reality, with the expression of the old man, the blanket cannot really make ghosts and monsters unable to see his existence. So, perhaps the important point is to hide this action. That is to say, as long as he hasn't been exposed from the blanket and doesn't take his gaze away, the old man has no way to deal with him. This quilt is very long and thick, which can cover the entire bed, so it is not a problem to wrap around him as an adult male, and now it is the same when draped over him as a cloak. Sure enough, when he stood up straight, the old man's smile gradually collapsed. He stretched his 5 fingers and tightly grasped the white and blank sheet, but could not leave a trace on the soft sheet. This situation almost gave Bai Wui the illusion that this ghost was not threatening, but he quickly calmed down and cautiously walked to the door, turning on the light with a snap. To his surprise, as soon as he turned on the light, the eerie old man disappeared in an instant. Without time to relax, Bai Wui immediately went to check the window. The figure showed its prototype under the light, resembling a damp garment that seemed to have been blown open by the wind and draped a sleeve over the window sill. But after experiencing the previous events, Bai Wui couldn't believe that the previous human movement was an illusion. He quickly put away his clothes from the window to avoid seeing them again. After finishing all of this, Bai Wui sat back on the bed, staring blankly at the open light. The light seemed to be able to dispel ghosts and monsters, so perhaps he can turn on the lights to avoid the old man's attack. But if he turns off the lights now, will the old man come back? The rules probably wouldn't give a seemingly foolproof solution. Without any abilities, Bai Wui, who was particularly vigilant, shook his head and ultimately wrapped himself tightly in a blanket before turning off the light. The old man did not immediately reappear, which is fortunate. Just as he was daydreaming for a short period of time, the continuous knocking outside seemed to have finally stopped, followed by a chaotic roar. Bai Wui suddenly remembered a question. It seems that his father who works is still outside. If he opens the door from outside, is it also considered a violation of the rules? But if Bai Wui leaves the bedroom door at this moment, it would also violate the rules. Grandma. He had long felt that Rule 11 was the most vague expression, but in the end, it was still presented. Just as he was as anxious as ants on a hot pot, his father slowly walked to the door of the bedroom that could not be closed. The middle-aged man with gray hair had a blank expression on his face, and his hands were filled with a mixture of red and yellow. He clenched his fist tightly, injured himself on top, and was penetrated into the flesh by a white hard piece. The soles of his shoes also adhered to many strange liquids, which blurred when rubbed against the white tiles. The knocking on the door from the outside never sounded again, and there was no second person following him. The middle-aged man coldly glanced at Bai Wui from the door that could not be closed, then silently walked away without turning back. After a while, Bai Wui dared to resume normal breathing. The people outside the door don't seem to need to worry anymore, but in this family, there is a mother sleeping like a corpse, a silent and violent father, and grandparents who are unaware of life and death. In a sense, it is truly a harmonious family. If you don't leave soon, there's no need to wait for the rules or ghosts, even your own heart can't bear it. After waiting for a long time without any abnormalities, Bai Wui, who had been frightened all day, suddenly felt his brain empty and fell asleep almost dizzy. Chapter 6 Absolutely Correct. External Analysis. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 7 Absolutely Correct. Hidden Dangers. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8 Absolutely Correct. Supplementary Tips. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. With a heavy expression on her face, she returned to the living room. Her mother had officially woken up and finished her meal. What's wrong with you? Are you in a bad mood? A mother dressed in an apron walked over with vegetables, touching her white head like a child. Today, make your favorite fried meat with green peppers and mapo tofu. Tell your mother what you want to eat, or tell your mother if you are unhappy. Her face was still very pale, and the previous state of feigning death seemed to have had no impact on her, which made Bai Wui's concern for her somewhat silent. Mom, how is Grandma's condition? He casually picked a chopstick from the food handed over by his mother, and Bai Wui put it in his mouth to chew it carefully. Although it was just made, it seemed a bit cold, but it didn't really affect the taste, so he didn't pay much attention. Isn't it like that? Hey, I have to go feed her later. Mother let out a mournful sigh, looking gloomy, while Bai Wui had already thought of the next topic. So, what about my grandfather? Your grandfather has been dead for several months now, why don't you remember? Bai Wui's chewing mouth stopped. The rules say that the deceased is clearly a grandmother, but how did she become a grandfather in her mother's mouth? With great confusion, Bai Wui continued to ask calmly. No, what I'm saying is Grandma still thinking about Grandpa? She must have been very sad when Grandpa passed away. Your grandmother doesn't remember anything long ago, and she won't be sad either. My grandfather's passing feels quite sudden. Yeah, who would have thought he would slip in the restroom? Hey! Did my grandfather slip and die in the restroom? This information actually reminded Bai Wui of that old man and ghost, so the rules said that there was no one in the house except for the family if this person doesn't refer to humans, but also to ghosts and monsters. Can that monster be my grandfather? So, is Grandpa the one who caused the eerie thing to happen? I have to go to my grandparents' room now. After making this important judgment, Bai Wui went to the kitchen to have a meal with a little worry. Then he lied to his mother to sleep in the bedroom for the reason of taking a nap, and then went to Grandpa's room. My grandfather's room and Bai Wui's bedroom are exactly opposite each other, but the doors are positioned one end at a time and there is no door facing each other. This time, when Bai Wui pressed his hand on the door, his mother did not show any obstruction again. The heart that Bai Wui had just let go was once again suspended in the moment the door was pushed open. As soon as you enter the door, the first thing you see is a huge double bed and a highly swollen and ulcerated corpse above. The corpse had its mouth open, and sparse yellow teeth could be seen when it opened its eyes. The sparse white hair was wrinkled into a ball, piled up like mold. This is an elderly woman with a fat figure, and now she appears extremely swollen due to her giant view. Her bulging belly seems to burst at any moment, and she is wearing a thin white vest with a quilt covering her lower body. Surprisingly, this highly decaying body did not have much body odor. Bai Wui walked forward with fear and nausea, but still smelled a smell of decay. However, upon closer inspection, it seemed that the decay came more from the old man's mouth than from his body. Bai Wui carefully examined her mouth. Her mouth was filled with food, and the latest one she stuffed was a portion of green pepper stir-fried meat. This is probably the old man that my mother has been taking care of, my grandmother. Her swollen belly is probably filled with the food my mother's stuffing into it every day. The rules don't lie, my grandmother did indeed die. The thought of encountering inevitable danger and having to spend the night with this highly decaying corpse made Bai Wui feel exhausted. At this moment, he saw the old man's hand tightly clenched, as if there was something white inside. Bai Wui hesitated and broke open her hand to take off the thing. This is a piece of paper, with some messy handwriting written on it. Good grandson, my grandmother has left. As we grow old, there will always be this day. It's not a big deal. Here are some things my grandmother has summarized. You should remember them well. Although they cannot be the same as Zhen Shi, they also have one advantage. You can absolutely trust the rules on the slate, but you cannot fully trust the rules on the slate. 2. Pay attention to distinguishing between reality and dreams. Dreams are the sediment of the past and will not truly create new things out of thin air. If you cannot distinguish them clearly, remember the rules firmly. The mirror is very sharp, and anything that touches its cut surface will break. Your mother loves you very much, but she can't leave your father. She sometimes does things wrong, but it's not malicious. They are more cunning than you imagine, and sometimes they can take risks. Your grandfather is not the perpetrator, but the victim. Don't hate him, that's not him anymore. There won't be any living people in the family in the end. This is the last thing Grandma can do for you. I hope you can make good use of it. If possible, save your mother. Grandma will bless you below. Run. 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 The calm expression was torn apart into a terrifying warning in the end, and the handwriting was so messy that it could not be seen clearly. Bai Wui suddenly looked up, afraid that the body on the bed would suddenly pop up and give him a big surprise after seeing this scene, but fortunately, the body was still lying quietly on the bed without any changes. Bai Wui took a deep breath and groped in his grandfather's bedroom, but found nothing. He then took a note and walked out, closing the door before heading to the bedroom to wake up his mother who was sleeping in bed. I don't know, but when Bai Wui entered the bedroom, he suddenly saw his mother hunched her body on the bed, her pale face turning blue and purple, with rose-like purple corpse spots appearing on it. Does the mother quickly decay when she falls asleep? But at night, she clearly didn't change that much. Anyway, Bai Wui, who was covered in cold sweat, pulled up his mother from the bed and woke her up. After waking up, my mother still looked bewildered, but soon shook her head and left the bedroom to do her own business. Bai Wui, however, was somewhat preoccupied. He took the note he received from his grandmother and went to a restaurant that was sure to be safe during the day, starting to think about the most urgent issues at present. The first question is the last sentence of Grandma's note. There won't be any living people in the family in the end. Surprisingly, there is such an important piece of information in my grandfather's room. It seems that we cannot be too conservative in the strange talk. Mother's situation is also not optimistic. It seems unlikely to use sleep to directly control this character. When Bai Wui took out the note, the expert group of Dragon Country naturally saw the content on the note, and after reading it thoroughly, they all took a deep breath. The content on this note, not to mention anything else, simply stating the last one can be considered as blocking the possibility of a clearance. The strange talk about rules is too illusory and lacks any prior experience. If you want to guess, the general clearance conditions should go through several ways, such as surviving a limited number of days, escaping from a strange place, understanding the truth, or killing monsters through some means. But according to my grandmother's note, there won't be any living people at home in the end. That is to say, if you stay at home all the time, you are likely to become a dead person. In this way, the way of procrastinating by living beyond a limited number of days is no longer feasible, which also means that athletes should adopt a more proactive and even radical approach to conducting investigations, viewing time as a threat to themselves, rather than vitality. Chapter 9 Absolutely correct. Guessing the pass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 10 Absolute correct. Incorrect clearance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The live broadcast room in Longwo was a bit dull from the beginning. After confessing that none of them had been able to extract abilities, the internet was filled with howls of sorrow, and a group of people who usually like to insult their country were even exaggerating this. The comments on the barrage were filled with schadenfreude comments about the imminent demise of the Dragon Kingdom. Isn't it outrageous for players from the Dragon Kingdom? Although not all abilities from other countries are useful, at least they still have them. They are useless, they are not even useless. I call you an alien from your horse. If you want me to die when you step on your horse, just say so and play with your horse in these winding paths. Don't make a fuss. Who said we were born in the Dragon Kingdom? Every day, we are either oppressed or oppressed, so we don't have time to develop any special abilities. Alas, unfortunately, why isn't this weirdness just a test bench and face saving? I am willing to suffer more in this life, and not be a dragon person in the next life. What are you again? This matter can be decided by the country. Dissolve your nationality by 250, and you can handle the procedures by finding one anywhere in the bureau. Get out of your lighthouse and don't force yourself here. If I could go to the barrage of other countries, I wouldn't be here to force me, would I? Oh, got stuck in the neck again. That neck is quite long, isn't it? Not long after this barrage passed, there was a sudden commotion on the live streaming platform, and then around 100 live streaming rooms suddenly lit up, while the barrage in the Longwa live streaming room was even more boiling. Sleeping Trough, Lighthouse Country has announced the lifting of their blockade on us. It seems that their players have been eliminated, so there are still supernatural abilities. We haven't been able to hold on for more than half of our time, brother bye. Where was that bad pen just now? Who said it got stuck in the neck? Our country's neck is fine, but your foreign father's neck is fine, mad. Finally these dog barrage have been eliminated. Who was managing this live broadcast room just now? My big account has been banned, and these dogs are rare and still good. Although Dragon Kingdom has finally resumed live streaming with foreign countries, at this moment, as the difficulty of dungeons continues to soar, there are not many remaining players. But there are also benefits to this. The audience of the Dragon Kingdom originally thought that other countries' athletes should also have been going smoothly because Bai Wui could still live to this day without any abilities. Now, seeing the actual number of survivors, they couldn't help but feel confident. I just watched replays from other countries, and I thought they would have a cool art style there, but I didn't expect. They died so tragically. Have you seen the death of a player from Bangzi country? In this game, abilities are just icing on the cake. Without a brain, it may become something that deceives oneself to death. Someone played a live video replay of a Bangzi country player, and a group of people quickly clicked in. As soon as they opened it, they saw Bangzi country players repeatedly turning on and off a wardrobe with their hands. Baseball players are in a good mood now, even humming songs when they stand up. He opened the wardrobe and a series of corpses were exposed inside. A dead head fell to the ground, revealing the face of a middle-aged woman. I'll go. He killed this mother directly. It said that there are many perverts in Bangzi country, but now it seems true. Seeing this head fall to the ground, the player from Bangzi country snorted impatiently and kicked it back in. He had received information from his grandfather's room early on, and was originally afraid that his mother would also attack him. But the note said that his mother loved him, so he shouldn't have caused trouble everywhere. And almost opened the door to let him get killed. So the next day when he got up, he pulled out the knife he had taken out in the kitchen yesterday, killed her and dismembered her. His mother's body was surprisingly thin and without any struggle, and it was easier to dismember than other girls. After finishing all of this, the Bangzi country player heard footsteps outside and his eyes lit up. Then, his body suddenly disappeared from the air bit by bit. However, it seems that the live broadcast believed that the complete disappearance somewhat affected the audience's perception, so soon the bodies of the Bangzi country players were presented in a semi-transparent form. Is this invisible? I'll go, I found out. This guy is a serial killer. Yeah, just released from prison and even made a movie. This person had been following another little girl and assaulting the dismembered body before. Now he will be invisible. Who can still catch him? Why did Bangzi Guoming catch him and release him? Don't be afraid, those in front are all dead, aren't they? Unlike the Dragon Country barrage that appears on the recording screen, the Bangzi Country barrage presents a polarized attitude. Some people are also angrily criticizing the heinous nature of this murderer, while others are constantly supporting him and even defending his previous cases. All of this, the Bangzi country player naturally didn't know. He just walked slowly towards the door, and then saw his father walking away with a cold and indifferent expression. A twisted smile appeared on the faces of the players from Bangzi country. He walked over and climbed onto his father's back, like a spirit behind his back, tightly grasping his father who was walking outward. Father was unaware that this meant that the Bangsi country players should actually be completely invisible, and may even have no tactile sensation. He wants to go out with this dad. Well. It seems like. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's a bit. This scene is too disgusting. I'll go vomit for a while. Climbing onto his back by a player from Bangsi country, his father's body remained as firm as a stone. He walked through the corridor and quickly opened the iron door to the outside world with his hands. A dim corridor was exposed in the view of the contestant from Bangsi country, and the induction light did not light up due to the sound of opening the door, appearing somewhat sluggish. Father walked like a robot towards a rudimentary elevator. The heart of the Bangsi country athlete also became increasingly excited with his footsteps. When his father finally walked completely into the narrow elevator, he almost burst out laughing. Touch. A small breaking sound sounded, and the next second, the Bangsi national athlete felt his body being grabbed by a strange suction force, and then fell heavily. He thought it was the elevator falling down, but when his vision returned from confusion, he realized that he had smashed a big hole in the floor of the elevator and was constantly sinking downwards. What's going on here? The player from Bangsi country looked panicked and wanted to support himself. Although he was also an adult man with considerable strength, at this moment, no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't stand up on his own. As he watched himself getting closer and closer to the pitch-black scene, the Bangsi national athlete could only interrupt his invisibility and loudly shout for help to his father. Father! Father! Help me! Father stood in the elevator, his tall body standing in front of the elevator door that was slowly closing. Although the baseball player had already released invisibility, he seemed to still not see him and ignored his cries for help. The baseball player desperately grabbed the edge of the elevator, gritted his teeth, and grabbed his father's leg, intending to pull him down together. Dragging like this, the baseball player actually felt his body stabilize a bit, and a wave of ecstasy emerged from his heart. Just as he was intoxicated with the joy of surviving the disaster, the elevator fell down like a meteorite, and the next second, the ecstatic baseball player's lower body hit the ground at the bottom. His upper body remained intact, even unshakable, while his lower body was squeezed into a paste like rotten tomatoes. The elevator slowly rises again. This is not the first floor, not even any of the first floors, and my father, who is gradually turning red with blood at his feet, still patiently waits. When the door finally opened, he lifted his foot and pulled the gripping hand off the body, and a broken hand also fell from the actual UFO platform with a snap. It seems that this contestant is the first to reach the outside world. The live broadcast screen changes, and the host happily grabs the hand and shows it to the screen. Unfortunately, keeping one hand is not enough to clear the level, right? The next second, the live broadcast room of Bangwo was closed in a howl of sorrow.